皆さん、こんにちは。はじめまして。私はテロールです。どうぞよろしくお願いします。Okay, so today is my first lesson in Japanese, and I'm just going to cover some very basic things and just things to get you started off in your Japanese learning. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to introduce to you is some vocabulary, so just to get us started. I've got this here, which is my list of vocab, so I'll start with the top. These ones I just think you should know the difference between, which is Nihon, Nihon, or it can be Nippon, but today we'll use Nihon. This means Japan. Now, the next one is Nihongo. Yes, has something to do with Japan. Nihongo, with the go on the end, says Japanese, as in the Japanese language. The next one is Nihonjin. Nihonjin. This is again Japanese, as in you're a Japanese person. So basically, to figure this out, you've got Nihon or Nippon. Nihon is Japan. Nihongo is the language of Japan. And Nihonjin is a person of Japan. Moving on, we've got Sensei. Sensei. This means, if you've watched any animes or watched any kind of Japanese drama movies or anything like that, you may have heard this one. Sensei is what you would call your teacher, but it can also be what you call a doctor if you're addressing them, or a master. And I don't mean a master in the sense as if you're a slave or something. I mean a master in the sense like you're a master of kung fu or something like that. You would call them sensei. Traditionally, sensei is added on, you can say the person's last name, like Tanaka, Tanaka sensei, Tanaka sensei, and it means teacher, master, or doctor. Or it can be used for tutor, but again that falls into the same category as a teacher, because you're teaching something. The next one is Oka-san. Oka-san. Now you may have heard this one too. This one means mother. But it's not your own mother. It is, you could either address a mother figure or your friend's mum or someone like that as Oka-san. Or you could shorten it down to Ka-san. Oka-san is a very polite way of saying it. So you've just met your friend's mother and you could call them Oka-san, Oka-san. But if you're familiar with them, on a very casual basis, you just call them Ka-san, Ka-san. Okay, the next one is Otou-san, Otou-san. Again, this can be shortened down to To-san, and the same formalities apply here. This is Otou-san is more polite, To-san is more impolite. Next, we have some fun, just a couple of adjectives. These adjectives are tanoshii, tanoshii, which is fun. Utsukushi, utsukushi, beautiful. Ii, ii, good. Warui, warui, bad. Samui, samui, cold. Atsui, atsui, hot. Now, these two are referring to the weather or a temperature of something. So you wouldn't say to someone, you wouldn't call someone atsui unless they were running a fever or something like that. So it's not as in the English language where you call someone hot and it means they're attractive. You don't go, this is just temperature weather-wise. And next we have just a couple of little words that may be found around the house. So there's hon, hon, and this means book, hon. The next one is hako. Hako. Box. The next one is ninkyo. Ninkyo. Now this one means doll, but you could also use the adopted word, which is doru. Doru. But here I'm going to try and use traditional Japanese words as much as possible, just to broaden your vocabulary a bit. So this one is ninkyo. Ninkyo. Doll. And then kodomo. Kodomo. Child. Kuma. Kuma. Bear, as in a bear. Okay, so that's the basic vocabulary I have for today, and I'm going to use it to help along with some examples. So the first thing I want to tell you about the Japanese language is its sentence. I'm going to talk about sentence structure, and I think the most important thing that you need to know is that it follows the SOV rule, which is subject, object, verb, which is different to English. So forget everything that applies to English. You're learning a completely new language, and we've got to start from scratch. So I just want to give you a small thing to practice with so that you can start making your own sentences and having a little bit of fun and practicing putting words together, so you can, and it gives you a reason to broaden your vocabulary, which is the most important thing when learning a new language. It's not so much the grammar and everything like that. Yeah, that's important for talking, but vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. You need to build it. There is so many words in this world. So the first one I'm going to start off with is basically this one up here. Blank wa blank des. Now you notice the wa here is actually, the wa is the hiragana for ha. But in this instance, because it's used as a particle, you pronounce it as wa. So it's blank wa blank des. Now, in these blank places, you can either have a noun, wa noun, des, or noun wa adjective, des. Always have a noun at the starting point of this. Now, des is the formal version. Where are we going here? Des is the formal version. You can make this sentence informal by changing the des to da, and they both have the same meaning, which is, am, or are. So that's just what it represents if you need an English equivalent. So that's what it means. So des is what you use when you're first talking to someone you've never met before, or that you're not very familiar with. Da is how you talk just around people you are casual with and comfortable. So blank, but we'll use the top one as for now. Okay, so blank wa blank des. Here's where we can bring into some of our vocabulary, just to make this a little bit fun. So we need to find a noun. The nouns on this we had. Oof. So there's our nouns and there's our sentence structure. So we can find a noun, and we could say, what would you like? We could say, kodomo wa utsukushi desu. Kodomo wa utsukushi desu. So kodomo, child, is the noun, and the subject, which is marked by wa, the particle marking the subject. Utsukushi is the adjective, desu. So utsukushi is wa. Kodomo wa utsukushi desu. The child is beautiful. Or we could say, Nihongo wa tanoshii desu. Nihongo wa tanoshii desu. Nihongo means the Japanese language. Wa, subject. Tanoshii, fun, desu. So, Nihongo wa tanoshii desu. Japanese is fun. Now referring to the language again. So, as you can see, if you want, you can write down these, or I'll have them written down on my site, and you can just experiment and making your own sentences. It's not that hard. So just remember, you have noun, and that's the subject, which the sentence is about. Wa, noun or adjective. So I've given you basically adjectives. You could say, for example, you could say Japan is a country, and I'll write down some more vocabulary for later, so you could have Japan and country written in Japanese here. And yeah, so just play around with it. And you can even do the slang ones if you want. So moving on, I'd just quickly like to introduce you to making questions, Making questions, once you've gotten the first part down, is extremely easy. Well, in this type of question anyway. The ka questions. Ka is a spoken and written question mark. The Japanese don't tend to use the traditional Western sort of English question mark, which is you would recognize. The Japanese tend to mark their questions with ka. So that would look like, if you wanted to play around with some sentences, that would look like these purple ones down here. Blank wa blank desu ka? See, all we've done is added ka onto the end of our previous sentences. And so you could say, an example of the first one was, Nihongo wa tanoshii desu. Now, you could change that from Japanese is fun to is Japanese fun, simply by adding the ka on the end. So that would sound like, Nihongo wa tanoshii desu ka? Nihongo wa tanoshii desu ka? Very simple. Now, sometimes in Japan, when you're speaking to someone and they're asking you a question, they don't really, sometimes they just drop off the ka and they give that higher intone in their voice. So, I'll give you the example again. So you go, Nihongo wa tanoshii desu. Sounds like a statement. Nihongo wa tanoshii desu. Now, that sounds more like a question because you're raising your voice at the end. But don't worry too much about that right now. We'll just focus on the written and spoken basic stuff. So we'll just stick to the first one, which is ka. That's how you make a question. Now, we can also mix it around and use different words like for example, I could give you a new word, which is anata. Anata means you. So when you're talking to someone else, you say anata. Anata wa semui desu. Anata wa semui desu. Now, that is saying you are cold. Now, you could also say, we'll change that into the question form. Anata wa semui desu ka? Anata wa semui desu ka? That's, are you cold? See the differences? Like, it's very self-explanatory after that. So there's my examples. Now there are a wide range of other things. Like, I'll introduce you briefly to the things I'm going to cover in the next lesson a little bit more in depth. The words kore, sore, are, kono, sono, ano, and so on. Basically, those words, kore or kono, is something that you're holding. So I could have this doll, and I'll be like, So having this doll, I could say, kono ninkyō wa kuroi. Kono ninkyō wa kuroi desu. This doll is black. But if this doll was over here, like more closer to, if, say, the other person that I was talking to was holding that doll, I would say, sono ninkyō wa kuroi desu. I'd say sono, because I'm no longer holding the object. The best way to explain it as English is kono is this, close to me, saying this in English. Sono is that, and then you have ano, which is something over there. Now, kono, sono, and ano are just used when you're inserting a noun. So if you're saying kono ninkyo desu, kono ninkyo desu, so this doll, this is a doll. No, that doesn't make sense. Kono ninkyo wa kuroi desu. You'd put kono in front of the noun. But if you were saying this is a doll, you'd change it to kore wa ninkyo desu. This is a doll. Kore wa ninkyo desu. So if you understood that bit a little bit enough, I have a little bit about it on my website as well underneath this video. So you can just play around with some sentences. I think I've given you enough to just do very basic things, and if you have any other questions about what I've talked about or something that you're curious about, then be sure to message me and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. Or if you have anything that you want me to cover in the next lesson, I can cover that as well. So, thank you for listening and watching. Ja matta ne!